Hey, it's David Newarner here. Hey, how y'all doing? I'd like to leave a message today. My wife was watching Little House on the Prairie, and I was hearing parts of it, and I said, you know what? There's a lot of messages in this Little House on the Prairie that means a lot. Ties in a lot with today. A lot to do with our media and how our media is spreading dissension amongst Americans. They're inflating so much and exaggerating so much and filling the airwaves with all of their opinions and very little to do with real fact of the matter issues. All these journalists on their talk shows and representing the newscasting networks out there, and they're getting away with their opinions about stuff. It's not based on solid fact. It's not real journalism. The term fake news really does apply. I think they need to take a little bit of Little House on the Prairie to heart. So, with that in mind, news media outlets and news shows and journalists out there that are not reporting the facts, but reporting what they think they should be saying instead of what they should be saying. Watch this show. Check it out.
As a matter of fact, far from being illiterate, Mr. and Mrs. Schiller speak 2 languages, which I think is more than most of us in this church can claim. There is someone else in this church that speaks 2 languages. Mr. Sterling Murdoch. Mr. Murdoch's second language is that of his newspaper, The Pen and the Plow. It's a language made up of half-truths, innuendos, and outright lies. It's the language of yellow journalism. When I talked to Mr. Murdoch about the harm that his newspaper was doing, he shut me off. He claimed his right to freedom of the press. Well, as I see it, freedom of the press doesn't give anyone the right to print lies that blacken a person's name and cause pain. And that is exactly what the Pen and the Plow is doing, in direct conflict with the text that I chose this morning. The 8th commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. But Mr. Murdoch told me that is the language that you all want to read. And apparently he's right. And I've asked myself over and over again, why do you continue to support that paper? Do you derive that much pleasure from the pain and suffering of others? Or is it because it's not you that's being hurt? When you go out and buy that newspaper on Saturday morning, you are supporting and encouraging the very sins that you decry in this church on Sunday. Well, I think it's time that we begin to practice what we preach inside this church, outside this church. On the streets of Walnut Grove, on our farms, in our homes, with our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones.
So as you can see, there's a couple morals in the Little House of the Prairie that I think can apply to our media today. I'm just going to throw Fox News under the bus right now. Because for the last couple of years, the mouthpieces that have been showing themselves on Fox News, espousing their views and their opinions, which had very little to do with fact, and then the news gets taken to court and paid $700 million, so they just paid their way out of prison, basically. Our nation needs to take a real close look at what news agencies and are actually getting unlicensed protection, spreading false information to the American citizens, leading to the social corruption we have today. A lot of the misinformation that comes from these news agencies is extremely harmful to the citizens and the national security. We need to really look at these news agencies and say, hey, you're guilty of spreading false information, misinformation, and they need to lose their license. They need to lose their protection under the Constitution if they're going to do things against the Constitution. tired of news agencies taking advantage of their protection to harm American citizens and America as a whole. If the news is going to violate public trust, I believe they should be censored. Now, I'm not for censoring the news, and I'm not for censoring anyone's rights, and the amendments are there for a reason. But I believe that the news media can censor themselves and each other. And if the news media is going to break the trust of American citizens, a news network goes out of its way to embarrass free journalists across the nation, they should stand up and report that. Journalists need to tell the story, the truth of the story, whether it's a small, local, hometown story or it's a big story. We have a problem in our society today where one network will come on at 1 o'clock to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and report big stories, and then everybody reports the same thing all day long the next day. There's a lot more going on in America than 5 or 6 stories that they just recycle over and over again. From one network to another network to another network. There's a lot going on in the world and in the United States and in the hometowns that people would love to hear about. Let's stop repeating what Fox News says, folks. A lot of it is so much BS. And thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the video.